He was always so devoted to the pole. She liked it, and me too. She sighed dramatically before turning back to Aaron. So we sat down together and I apologized for my role in all of this. She said that yes, I lied to you, and that he shouldn't blame you for all this. If anyone has to blame, then let him blame me. But I was only trying to help my friend. Becca bit her bottom lip for a moment. I think that was a nice touch. This actually highlights her annoyance. And then I told him another lie to make him feel better. She said that I had an ulterior motive, that I had always liked him. Said it hurt me that he'd rejected me for Paula all these years, and I wanted to see what I'd missed. Paula always said he was great in bed. She glanced at me and smiled radiantly. It's not a lie. She really always said that you were wonderful, and that's why I volunteered to console him. Aaron looked at me, then at her. But it was a lie? She nodded. In the part that I wanted him, yes. I've never looked at anyone but you, Aaron, since we got together. I laughed out loud, and Becca gave me a small smile for my efforts. Forgive me, Frank. I'm not trying to hurt you, but it would be better if I confess now before more damage is done to our friendship or your family. I've never wanted anyone but Aaron, and my ex-best friend interrupted her. Wait, you said you lied twice, but you told me that you both slept together that night, that he wasn't good, and... sorry, Frank. Oh, it's okay. As your devoted wife said, it's best to let it all out now, right? Minimize damage? Yes. Aaron spent enough time in court to know that the investigation was heading for disaster, and I spent enough time with him to know most of his blind spots. The biggest one, of course, was Becca. Then, in the spirit of honesty, let me say that everything Becca has said so far is true. Or at least what she told me as we sat together at my kitchen table. She lied to you about my enthusiasm. She obviously lied to me that she was attracted to me, and she and I agreed that even though we weren't going to have sex because she wasn't attracted to me, we would pretend we did so as not to upset her. You, or more importantly, Paul. So she lied 3 times, not twice, but it's easy to lose count when you lie so much, isn't it, Becca? It doesn't matter, it's a rhetorical question. I stood up to stretch my legs and noticed a photo of my departed wife among the boxes that Jenny still hadn't unpacked. Unable to suppress a sad smile, I picked it up and looked at it for a moment before placing it on a jumbly of metal and chipboard that vaguely resembled an end table next to the sofa bed. Of course, facing our friends. Unless it's 2 lies instead of 3. Aaron, remember, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when Becca suggested you take up swinging. That caught her attention. She immediately became stiff as a board. Oh, I see your charming wife remembers. He looked at her, then back at me. Yes, I remember mentioning this. And what? Your answer, if I remember it correctly, was, hell will be cold before I agree to this. Paula and Becca talked about it too, and Paula told me that Becca was very disappointed about it. She snapped, yes, but in the end I agreed with him. It's okay to just fantasize, and it's... God, Frank, do you really want to have this conversation in front of your daughter? Oh, don't even try to talk that nonsense. You got her into this, not me. I would leave sleeping dogs alone if you did too. I want you to remember, everything that is happening now is your fault, and you will not be able to get out of it so easily. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Anyway, did you know that she and Paula were talking about this again shortly before you 3 ambushed me? Her words, I think, were something like, you know, if things work out between the 4 of us, I'll try to get Aaron into swinging again. After all, we'll already be able to do this, right? It's a lie. She looked at her husband and, to her horror, found that he was also staring at her. Really, Aaron? Maybe she hinted at this after things got better with Paula? Because now we both know that she lied to you about how everything went okay. He went from glaring at her to glaring. You see, I think she only lied twice after all. The first time was when I told you earlier that I had previously received permission from me before approaching you. The second was not when she told me that she found me attractive, but when she said that we evened the score. Because she actually found me attractive. She really wanted to sleep with me. That's what Paula told me. Becca grinned, but her eyes didn't match her tone. I saw fear in them, not indignation. God, Frank, of course I told Paul about this. I just wanted her to feel good about it all. If only I knew you would be so fragile, I would... This made me laugh out loud. Oh, Rebecca, the problem with bringing someone with poor impulse control into your schemes is that they are not good at keeping secrets. She blushed as she realized how unwise she had been in trusting a stranger who looked and sounded like her best friend. As soon as I agreed to all this, I asked her why she wanted to do this. Not in a way that would upset her, but just out of general curiosity. And then she told everything. Becca told Paula that your personal life has become stale, that she lacks variety, and that she really wants to be with me. Apparently, she put even more into this than she put Paul into her to-do list. In fact, she told me that Becca had been complaining about boredom even before Paula was diagnosed. In fact, a couple of years before that. This is not true. I love Aaron. I shrugged. Both statements can be true. You can love him and get bored in your sex life. Paula and I looked at Jenny. Well, we did everything we could to keep it fresh. She and I winced in unison. No daughter wants to listen to her father discuss his sex life with her mother, and I definitely didn't want to talk about it. Come on, you were both such prudes that... Stop talking like that. My daughter entered into an altercation, her eyes sparkling with anger. Mom was not a prude. Becca tried to speak in a conciliatory tone, like talking to a small child. Oh, honey, it's okay. I love your mom. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the way she was. But she wasn't like that. God, Jenny looked at me. Sorry, Dad. I have to say this. Mom was not a prude. She had a very positive attitude towards sex. But she was also glad that she was only with Dad. She told me about this back then. Well, when we were talking. Of course I did, Jenny. She wanted you to follow in her footsteps. I am glad that... No, I didn't want to. Shut up and listen, or at least stop putting her down, Becca. Not Aunt Becca, just Becca. We've talked about this a lot over the years, about the decisions I could make, about the ones I took. And she told me that she was happy with what she chose for herself, with the fact that she was always only with Dad. But she also doesn't, Another look at me. I sighed. No father wants to listen to his daughter talk about her sex life. When I told her that I didn't make the same choice, she supported me. She said I had to go my own way, just like she and you did. She never said anything bad about you, but you were always nagging when you tried to be cool Aunt Becca, if it was just you and me in the house. And I didn't want to make her choice. But I didn't want to make yours either. Even a couple of years ago, she told me that she was proud that I made a choice instead of blindly following one of you. What? That I'm sexually active, but only with real guys. Mostly. No, I really didn't want to hear that. I felt myself blushing. And she told me about how she and Dad maintained an exciting relationship with each other. No bigot would do what he and Dad did, or buy things like this. Okay, honey, I think that's enough. My face was just burning. I think Jenny would have found it funny if the circumstances had been different. I turned to look at my beloved wife's best friend and worst traitor, both of whom were the same person. You understand what's going on? She wasn't a prude. I just haven't slept with every damn guy with a pulse like you. But that wasn't enough, and you needed to prove that you were right, that all this time she was just a little inexperienced church mouse. And if that meant you could reboot your sex life too, well, so much the better, right? Becca jumped to her feet. I'm not gonna sit here and listen to you lie about me. I loved her, and just wanted to do something good for her before she left. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings, but if you loved her as much as I do, you would... Stop. Just shut up, Becca. Aaron spoke, his voice eerily calm. Stop lying. If anyone's ego is hurt here, it's yours. I saw the way you looked at Frank in the past, but I didn't pay attention to it because I thought you were loyal to me. It was just a look. We both did. So, I don't buy this. I never wanted to be with him. Bullshit. I won't buy it again. He stood up and walked towards the door, then looked over his shoulder at her. Are you coming or not? Then at me. He opened his mouth to speak, a pained expression appearing on his face. He shook his head and turned to Jenny. I'm sorry I got you into this, baby. I should have. Another shake of his head, then he opened the door and walked out. Becca following him, glaring at me. Jenny closed and locked the door. Dad, I'm sorry. She shook her head. For all. I shouldn't have interfered. I was just worried about you, like Uncle Aaron, and I kept pestering him until he told me, and I'm so sorry. There were tears in her eyes. My daughter reached out to me, just like when she was a child, if she did something wrong and needed reassurance. Of course, I hugged her and told her that I love her and forgive her. What else should a father do? After that, we sat and talked for some time. Some about what she had learned, some about how I was doing, some about her new job, or about other, more neutral topics. We studiously avoided any topics related to her sex life or her mother's life, with the exception of one question she asked shortly before I left. If it wasn't brain cancer, if it was something else, something that wouldn't change her behavior, so directly, would you agree to it if she asked? I was silent for several moments. I've asked myself this question several times since she left for Aaron that evening. I don't think she would have asked. But what if she did it? I didn't share this with anyone. There was no one I wanted to share this with, certainly not Becca or Aaron. Shortly before your mother died, she had one of her moments of clarity. You've seen a few of them, the ones where she was just your mom. And during one of them, when it was just her and me, she looked at me and said, "Sorry, Frank, I shouldn't have. I didn't think well, And then she cried and asked me to forgive her. And I forgave, told her what I told you, that it's not her. This is a tumor. And I wasn't just trying to make it easier, I actually believe it." So, the answer to your question is, no, I would not agree. Because she wouldn't ask me to. This seemed to satisfy Jenny as she reached out and squeezed my hand, and we both remembered the woman who meant so much to us for who she really was. I finished my drink and stood up. I need to go home and get some sleep. Are you coming to visit soon? Of course, Dad. She waited until I came to the door and said quietly, in a voice that every father knows, the voice of a little girl who still needs to be calmed down a little. Dad? Yes, Princess? I love you. I love you too, always, okay? Jenny nodded, a mixture of regret and relief on her face. She hurt me even if she didn't mean to, but I still loved her. She will always be my princess. And she knows that I still love her mom. 3 years later, Marilyn called out to me, "Darling, someone is waiting for you at the door." I walked to the front door of our apartment, enjoying the view that the back of my beautiful young wife offered me. "Hi, beauty. Who? Oh." Standing on the threshold was my oldest friend in the world. More precisely, a former friend. I won't say that I hadn't seen him for the previous 3 years. We still had the same group of friends after all, but I don't think we exchanged more than a dozen words beyond formal greetings during that time. He looked older now. Sure, we both look older. We're both in our late 50s. But he looked like 5 more years had crept in there somewhere. "Hello, Frank." Aaron. I kissed Marilyn on the cheek. She smiled at me, looked at our visitor with an icy gaze, and left without saying another word. I told her this story early in our relationship to avoid any awkward conversations later if we ever ran into Aaron or Becca. "What do you need?" "Can I come in?" "I'd like to talk." "No." "Come on, dude. We were friends. For more than 30 years. Don't I deserve at least some time? I know I hurt you, but I didn't try." Becca manipulated both of us. I thought for a moment. Did he want some time? Great. Not here. At O'Malley's in half an hour. Is it true? Okay, yes. Sounds great. See you there. I told Marilyn that I would be back in a few hours, took a jacket from the closet, got into the car, and drove off. O'Malley's restaurant was our favorite hangout. This is the perfect place for our last conversation. When I arrived, he had already taken a seat in the booth and ordered my favorite beer. In the almost 4 years since the funeral, I have never found anyone with whom I had the kind of relationship I had with him. 3 decades of history is difficult to make up. It was he who asked to talk, and I allowed him to talk. So, you got married again. It's been 3 months already. And moved. Yes, the children are already settled. Jenny is engaged, and Will's wife is expecting their first child. Boy. Aaron frowned. I talked to Will too, and both he and Jenny cut their godparents out of their lives. There is little chance that they will return to the nest and the old house. Well, I would prefer to create new memories in a new place. Logical. He drummed his fingers on the table, clearly trying to find the strength to move on to the real topic of conversation. Frank, I'm sorry. For all. For Becca, and what she did. For me and Paula. For talking to Jenny. For everything. I can't apologize enough. No, you can't. I know it, man. But like I said, Becca manipulated both of us, and many years have passed. I miss talking to you. I couldn't resist teasing him. Especially after the divorce, right? He winced. Yes, no, I missed you before. But the divorce put everything in its place. After everything I learned that evening, nothing was the same. Knowing what she did, I was always by her side, and you can't live like that. Agree. That's why I'm not interested in renewing our friendship. Why? I managed not to scream in his face, because you fucked my wife. Instead, he said, because I prefer to surround myself with people I can rely on. But you can rely on me. I thought I could, indeed. But then, well, I don't need to say, you know what you did. I was told that you don't mind, and I thought it was true. And here it is. Lies telling me I was right to cut him out of my life. No, I didn't think so. Thought. No, you wanted to believe in it, but this is not the same thing. I took a sip of beer. You always told me, a lawyer never asks a question unless he already knows the answer. But you did the opposite. You knew the answer, so you didn't ask the question. What? Leaning forward, I growled. You knew what kind of person I was, what my views on loyalty were, how special it was for me that Paula chose me to. I shook my head. You knew that I would never agree to this even approximately. If you had asked me, I would have answered with a categorical no. You knew this. This time, Aaron at least showed me the small favor of not lying. He knew what he had done and what he had not done. However, to twist the knife, I continued. All you had to do was tell them, I need to think about it, and call me if you had any doubts. But you didn't have any doubts, did you? You knew me. You knew me for 30 years, and knew what I would say. So, you didn't say. I decided not to do it because I knew what I would say. Instead, Paula told me that you were practically salivating. You saw a chance to have intercourse with someone other than your wife for the first time in more than 20 years, and you were able to tell yourself that this was a mission of mercy. So you did exactly what Becca did and decided to go for it. Buddy, I told you never to call me that again. I'm not your friend. The friend should have, at least damn it, consult with your friend before agreeing to something like this. The friend should have cared more about his friend who was watching the love of his life die and supported him through that pain more rather than making it worse by copulating with my wife. Then, no, you are not my friend. Maybe he once was, but not anymore. Just like I am not yours. Frank. A friend wouldn't keep information about what a slut Becca was. About how much she wanted to fuck his friend. How she was ready to manipulate her dying best friend into switching with her without her husband's knowledge. The buddy had to tell his best friend that she was planning this as a stepping stone to full swinging. The change of topic seemed to surprise him, but the tone surprised me even more. It stopped being an accusation and became something else. A confession. or maybe into a villain's monologue, depending on your point of view. A real friend, one who doesn't stab in the back, the one whom he loved as a brother since childhood, would warn that your fallen wife joked with Paula, that if the swing does not take place after your mission of mercy, then maybe she will leave you anyway. I took out the envelope and plopped it on the table. And a buddy, a real fully committed buddy, would tell you about the private detective he paid to follow this manipulative bitch. He would show you all the interesting photos the private investigator took while you were busy mourning the loss of your friendship. Friendships you killed because you thought you could get away with it. Aaron looked at me in horror, then at the envelope, then back at me. Yes, that's right. She started cheating on you a couple of months after the funeral, and I hid everything. I planned to send them to you anonymously when the affair got so long that you would never be able to forgive it. But then you decided to involve my daughter, your goddaughter, you son of a bitch, into this dirty drama. Although, maybe I should thank you for that. Then I laid it all out in the open. I giggled and he looked up at me again. Well, almost everything. Of course, I kept the photos. I thought it would be more pleasant for me to watch the two of you destroy your own marriage rather than help destroy it, having irrefutable evidence in hand. And God, that's how it happened. How long have you two been toddling together? How much would you save on a divorce if you had evidence and not just suspicion? Surely a lot. I guess we'll never know. I had almost forgotten how much I wanted this confrontation, how it supported me when I learned the whole truth, how it helped me to play my part at the funeral, to be polite to Becca and rude to Frank so that he would hopefully go into a tailspin and she would think she had gotten away with it. It became even easier to forget about it after the confrontation in Jenny's apartment, seeing how the seeds of mistrust had been sown then and knowing that they would almost certainly bear fruit. It felt incredibly good, and I decided that was enough for me. Enough to hide an envelope in a shoebox in the closet. Enough to live on. Enough to move past my pain and eventually allow my daughter to set me up with Marilyn, her work colleague. Enough to be happy again in your new life. But then Aaron tried to force his way into my life again. I stood up as he stared at me with his mouth open. I don't want to be your friend again. And now, I'm sure you don't want to be my friend either. It's true that I miss my friend, the guy I thought I could always rely on, but I lost him before I lost my wife. I live on, Aaron, and I advise you to do the same. Marilyn will never replace Paula, and I don't want her to. I just need her to be the one I love and who loves me. In the end, I'm sure I'll find a new best friend too. Maybe someone who will truly become the friend you were meant to be. With that, I threw in a few dollars to cover the bill and left my stunned ex-friend to brood over his sins. While driving home, I thought about his sins and mine, and Becky too. His main sin is simple: opportunism, almost understandable due to the influence of his ex-wife. But it was against me, his best friend, and I couldn't forgive that. However, he is also right that Becca set us all up. She was the one who set it all in motion. To an outside observer, it might seem that she got off easy with a divorce, after all the destruction she caused. I knew differently. I knew how much she had lost when she succumbed inexorably to temptation. Becca loved Aaron even though she was fed up with their love life, or at least that's what she thought. Even if she didn't love him, she liked the comfortable life that her marriage provided. Even with spousal support, she had to return to work with a degree that she had not used for 20 years, just as her beauty began to fade. The stress of the divorce didn't help either. The last time I saw her, she had aged as much as Aaron, if not more. I heard how hard she fought for her marriage, but had to try to convince Aaron that I was lying while trying to hide her own recent affair. She just couldn't handle it. Permission to cheat with Paula allowed her to easily manipulate him, but only because he trusted her. Those days are long gone. Becky's affair, and her desperate attempts to hide it, which made him even more suspicious, had driven the nail into the lid of their marriage, even if he had received proof of it only minutes ago. I'm sure Aaron would have even more questions as he looked through the thick stack of photographs and documents in the envelope. Who is this young stallion in the photos? Why did he need to seduce an almost married woman? Where does a college graduate with no prospects or a steady job get the money to wine and dine her? Judging by the photographs, they maintained an affair for several months, and the private investigator's notes repeatedly mentioned how strange it was that the man who cuckolded Aaron always tried to make it as easy as possible to get the pictures, leaving the blinds slightly open, lingering kisses indoors, openly groping in public. For what? And then the stallion disappeared almost as quickly as he had appeared, moving to another state just as Aaron began looking for evidence of Becky's infidelity. At the moment when Aaron most needed proof, he could only gather suspicions. Had the young man somehow received a warning? And Becca? These are all good questions that he will never get answers to. I realized one thing. I will take some secrets with me to the grave. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one.